Welcome to another episode of CH Sports with Kenny and Anthony. I am Anthony D'Orazio, and that is my co-host, Kenny Barber. Hi,
What's
Kenny.
up, guys? How's it going?
We are back for an end of June 2021 update on a very interesting and crazy week of sports, at least depending on what sports you follow. I guess it is. But for the sports we're interested in, it was a nutty week. We're going to start today's discussion, recap, whatever reaction, I don't know, whatever we do here, with the U.S. Olympic trials for track and field and the gymnastics trials, because I know both of us watched a lot of those events over the past week. Starting with the track and field stuff, a lot of crazy performances. If you have not had a chance to at least catch the highlights on NBC Sports' YouTube account, I urge you to go there and watch it. I guess, Kenny, we'll start with you. What was your top, I guess, in order, rank your top 3 or 4 performances from the track and field championships or Olympic trials, I guess?
I mean, the guy that won the 400 hurdles.
So Rye Benjamin.
Yeah, it was a joke. I mean, he was just like
his semifinal was absurd.
Yeah, he blew them away, and I think I posted one of his prelim races on my Facebook. Like, he was so far ahead of everyone, but running against some of the best runners in the world, right, or at least in the U.S. And seeing him, he basically jogging across the finish line.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like he's jogging, but he's still running fast, but just so far ahead and just blowing their doors off. An unbelievable performance there. The 100 hurdles guy as well. I was trying to count his steps in between hurdles. He was running so fast.
Grant Holloway is who you're thinking of there.
Yeah. Another guy in that short of a distance to win by that much is also impressive. And I would say, I mean, Simone Biles, you can throw her in there with, put those 3 in any order, really, the top 3, I think. And the fourth 2, we mentioned the 400 women's hurdles, who broke the world record and did something no one's ever done before. So
Sydney McLaughlin goes sub 52, 51.90, I believe, was her final final time.
Yeah.
So
and shake those up and pick whatever order you want. They're all crazy human performances.
Yeah, no, I agree. There are a lot. There were a bunch of nutty ones. All those were great ones. The Sydney McLaughlin and against Dalil Muhammad in that final. It's crazy that the last 3 times, and they kept mentioning this in the broadcast, so it's beating a dead horse here if you watch the broadcast. But including last night, the last 3 times they've met, her, Sydney McLaughlin against Dalil Muhammad, a world record's been set. Like, that is insane. And I would, go, if you go and watch her race, look at how relaxed she stays down that final 100 and how much speed she keeps over the last hurdle to the finish line. It's extremely impressive. They mentioned it in the broadcast, how, when you run your best races, especially in the sprints, they often feel like your easiest, like, cause you're not pressing, and I think we saw that with Grant Holloway in the 110 a little bit, where his semifinal, he was a 100th off the world record. He ran I want to say it's a 12.81, I think, and the world record is 12.8, 12.8 flat. I could be off there, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. And in the finals, he runs. I mean, I think he ran like a 13.04. I could probably look it up real quick. But whatever it was still extremely fast.
They said, no, not as good, but still really RFF, really effing fast.
Yeah, I'm looking it up here. Let's see. Yeah, in the semifinals, he went 12.81, which was the second fastest time of all time in the world. Yeah. And then in the final, he went 12.96, right? So it's 0.15 slower, which is not. It's still ridiculously fast. But, it seemed like he was pressing a little bit. He still won by 0.14 over the second place guy, Devin Allen. So super impressive performances by him. And he's running the semifinal and the final in the same night. So it's not like he's got a day of rest between there.
No.
So super impressive. Grant Holloway, Sydney McLaughlin. You mentioned Rye Benjamin. I think he was another one that was like 1/100th off the world record in his final, where he almost broke it. Very, very close. Like, smashed the American trials record. We're not even close.
He was the guy with the headband, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like as far as like running form, I mean, I'm not a running specialist at all, but he looked the most relaxed, cool, collected runner.
Yeah.
Just so fluid, just so cool to watch. I mean, what a phenomenal performance there. He
Yeah.
was
So he went 46.83, which was personal best meet record. They don't have the world record up here. But I think the world record's like just
close.
under that.
Yeah.
It's very close to that. So extremely impressive. And like you said, he won by, what did he win by here? He won by over a second. Second place was 48.08. Right? I mean, that's a different area code in track and field. Like one lap of the track, you're winning by anything over like a couple tenths. That's a lot. Yeah. He's winning by 1.2 seconds.
He was so far ahead.
That's a lifetime.
Yeah.
You know, so it's one of those where it's like, well, yeah, he didn't get the record, but like he also didn't have any competition, right? And I don't know if he has competition in the world, right? I mean, I guess there's I think the world champion from like 2 years ago is from somewhere in Europe. Apologies to that guy. I forget his name and where he's from. So I guess him, but I mean, you got to think this Rai Benjamin's the overwhelming favorite going into Tokyo.
Well, yeah, and I feel like with a lot of the track and field, a lot of the best competition is going to be in the U.S. Like it's tough to not get out of the U.S., but if you're one of the top people, there's a lot of competition up there in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, we have a large population, a lot of very good athletes do track and field. You could argue that a lot of them don't. They go into like higher pay sports that actually pay you money.
But, other big sports for sure.
But yeah, there are some great ones. We didn't even mention the men or women's 200 meters races. The women's 200, obviously, Gabby Thomas becomes the second fastest woman in history over that distance and goes 21.61, which is just flying. Yeah. She beat out Jenna Prandini, who PR'd and became the 24th fastest woman in history, 21.89, I believe. Let me pull up the times to make sure. Yes. 21.61 for Gabby Thomas, 21.89 for Jenna Prandini. And then third place was Navia Battle, 21.95. And she's actually an Ohio State person. So congrats to her. Me being a Ohio State person and teaching there. So, it's super impressive by Thomas. I mean, second fastest, the world record is obviously no woman's going to hit the world record anymore. I don't think it's 21.32 or something absurd, because it's FloJo, right? And there are question marks around FloJo's 100 and 200. And I think any female track and field athlete will tell you that, right? The fact that we have all these, if you look at the top times for women, running the 200, you have FloJo at 21.3, then you have FloJo at 21.5, and then you have a bunch of women stacked around, not a bunch, but like all the best times after that are like 21.6s, and there's a few there, and then some 21.7s, and a few 21.8s, right? So it's you can think of, I guess, FloJo's records how you want. I'll leave that up to the audience to make their own determination. She had one amazing year wherever all the times dropped by like 0.3 of a second, which is absurd in 100 and 200. You could say she added in weight training or something. But she also then retired right after that, right when they sort of initiated random drug testing.
More burritos, maybe.
Yeah, more burritos.
More burritos.
So congrats to Gabby Thomas. It was extremely impressive in performance. She came down the final 100 in great form, looked phenomenal, kept her speed, because her and Prandini came off almost even. I think Thomas was like a half a step ahead, and she just pulled away down the home stretch. And obviously Prandini was rolling, given that she PR'd, and is in the top 25 all time. So that was super exciting. And then the men's 200, no records or close to records in that event, but I think it's worth mentioning that Ariane Knighton, the 17-year-old, makes it in the men's 200, which is absurd. And he
pushed that guy too.
He ran a 19.84 at 17 years old.
Yeah.
Right. That is absurd.
Imagine racing him in high school.
Yeah.
Think about that.
I'd be like coming off the turn as he was finishing.
Yeah.
No Lyles won, which was good because Lyles, I didn't feel like Lyles had run well this year, up until this race. So it was good to see him run. Kenny Bednarik, who's been running very consistently very well PRs and runs a 19.78, so he goes under 19.8, which is great. I guess the guy that's probably most upset is Fred Curley, who's qualified in the 100. He made it in the 100, and we've mentioned him on the podcast on our little show before because he actually got under 20. He goes 19.90, which does put him as the third man, I believe, in history to have a sub 22, a sub 10 100, and a sub 44 400. I know we talk, obviously CHP, we're known for sort of hybrid performances, hybrid athletes. Obviously, this isn't, hybrid in sort of traditional sense. It's all running, but still having that sort of breadth of time, like those times over that breadth of distances is extremely impressive. Like there's a reason only 3 guys have done it in history.
Ever,
yeah. It's extremely, and I felt bad for him because not that they're going to mention it in the broadcast because, the focus is on the 3 guys that qualified and he didn't qualify. I think sure if he would have qualified, they would have mentioned it. But I was hoping they would at least like throw it out there. Like, and although he didn't qualify, he becomes the third man in history to XYZ.
Yeah.
Because I found that extremely impressive. And he'll get to compete in the 100. So hopefully he, is able to compete in the 100 and do well. Crazy week of track and field. I guess the other thing I wanted to mention was just because I got a kick out of watching it was the women's hammer throw. Deanna Price sets the American record, and it was, if you watch the highlights of her, she like basically improved every throw. Like she set the American record like 3 times in the same event because her like 3rd throw set the American record, her 4th throw broke it, 5th throw broke it again, and then her 6th I think she fouled or something. It wasn't a great throw in the 6th, but extremely impressive. Congrats to her, and she looks to be a favorite headed into Tokyo. Hammers. I think that's a really cool event because you're tossing a giant hammer thing around. Seems like fun. So, any other comments on the track and field stuff from you, Kenny?
Nah, it was, again, just impressive to watch. It was always very elite people doing crazy stuff. So,
yeah, I'm excited for Tokyo. Assuming everything goes through and, it runs, hopefully they can do it safely. I'll be interested to see how many athletes are actually able to make it. So fingers crossed everyone can be safe and make it there and stay healthy, both for the people of Tokyo and the athletes themselves. All right, the other thing we wanted to talk about, I guess our second major story, Tour de France kicked off. We forgot to mention it last week, but it kicked off when by the time this goes live 3 days ago, so Saturday, what's today, the 26th, it kicked off. And so we're recording this after stage 3. So stage 4 will have happened by the time this goes out, but we're recording after stage 3, and it has been a wild first couple days in the tour. Day 1, it's kind of an odd tour. They started with 2 mountain stages, so lots of hills the first 2 days to sort of separate the leaders from sort of the the sprinters and whatnot. So Julian Alaphilippe attack on day 1. He broke away from the main group and came home strong the last couple of kilometers, I believe, or last kilometer up the mountain. So he had the yellow jersey after day 1. Day 2 saw the current yellow jersey holder, and I'm going to make sure I get his name correct here, Martin van der Poel. He comes in and he attacks twice. It was interesting. The stage 2 was very interesting if you happen to look at it. They basically went up the same mountain twice at the end of the stage. They basically did a loop where they went up and then came back down and looped back up. And that was the end of the stage. And so the first time they went up, there was an 8-second time bonus. So he attacked the first time up to be the first to cross to get that 8-second time bonus because he was 18 seconds back of Alaphilippe. He gets the time bonus. He then smartly falls back to the peloton. He attacks again the second time up, breaks away again. Ends up winning the stage and getting the 10-second time bonus for winning. So he's got the 8 seconds for the first time around, the 10-second bonus for winning, which makes up his deficit from Alaphilippe. And because he broke away, there was a time gap. So there was 8-second time gap. So he ends up 8 seconds up on Alaphilippe after day 2. Extremely impressive to be able to put those 2 big efforts in on his own. It's the very end of a very long, hilly day on stage 2. And then today, stage 3 was a sprint stage, and it was carnage. This was by far the most number of crashes I've ever seen in a tour stage towards the end of the race. Usually, in a sprint stage like this, it's going to be relatively flat, maybe some undulating hills. That's kind of what today was. And there wasn't any, there was an attack early, breakaway early, but they ended up getting caught. But really, it was the last 10 kilometers, which is usually, the sprints winding up. And yes, big crashes have happened in the, in sprint stages towards the end, but it's usually like a single crash. And that's why they instituted a couple of years ago the 3 kilometer rule. There's probably an actual name for it, but I call it the 3 kilometer rule. Was if you're within, like with the peloton, after the 3 kilometers, everyone gets the same time. There's no gaps, which makes it safe, right? So that way, like the yellow jersey's not like trying to stay up with the sprinters and then gets in a crash and his entire race is wrecked. They can sort of drop back should they want to, and people aren't jockeying to like avoid a gap when it doesn't make sense. And it was unfortunate because there was a crash at like 10 kilometers out that took out a bunch of guys, and there were some big names in these crashes. There was like 2 or 3 crashes, before the 3 kilometer mark. I want to say 2, and then there was another crash in the like last 100 meters, where Caleb Ewan kind of it looked to me like his wheel touched the guy that ended up winning the stage, whose name I'm going to forget here. Tim Merlier. Apologies to him. I'm butchering his last name. But it looked like his wheel, Ewan's wheel, kind of touched, and he was against he had his barrier to the right, and he kind of had to whip the wheel, so he lost control, crashed right into Peter Sagan. So he took out himself and Sagan. I haven't checked on an update for Ewan. Ewan was down for a while, so I think his race is probably done. He looked very badly injured, so hoping he's okay overall. Even if he's out of the race, hopefully it's nothing too serious, maybe a broken bone or two. Sagan was able to get back on his bike and like pedal across, so he looked not too much the worse for wear. Obviously, he didn't. He was in great position for the sprint finish. He would have given, I think, Merlier a run down that final 70 to 50 meters. Didn't get a chance, so that's unfortunate for him because he's multiple time green jersey winner. Didn't win it last year, but won it like the prior 6 or 7 years, I think. So just a very crazy day. Lots of big names getting caught out in some of these crashes. It'll be interesting to see how things shake out and see if anyone has to retire over the next day or two. Some of these guys, they're tough as nails. They'll try and stick it out, and then sometimes they'll get on the bikes the next day or two and realize their bodies just are too damaged to continue. So hopefully that's not too many guys, but I assume it'll probably be a couple because it looked like a few guys got pretty badly injured in some of these pileups. Have you been able to watch any of it yet?
Just the one crash I mentioned, but with the sign, it's crazy to see that stuff. And that was the first stage, right?
Yeah, so I didn't even mention that. So that was on day 1, where if you've been paying any attention to sports, you probably saw this where spectator causes crash at Tour de France stage 1. This is so frustrating, right? If you've ever watched a tour, I mean, these spectators, obviously, each stage is 100 miles long, potentially, if not more, 120 miles long. So obviously, this is just on local roads, through France. So they can't obviously put up barriers all 100 miles because they're, moving. Each stage is different, right? There's different roads in different parts of the country. So there are typically barriers around like certain checkpoints, like, intermediate sprints, intermediate climbs, and, the finish. But obviously most of the races, you're a spectator, you just, you get a bite, or, if it's your house, you just step outside your house, or, maybe you get a caravan, you park on the side of the road and you just watch from the side of the road. And of course, by and large, most of these fans are great and are not, they're just clapping away, cheering on the competitors. It's phenomenal. It is really cool to see. But some of them, like, they wave their flags, they're, waving flags for different, nationalities and countries and, whatever, flags of various things that they're waving, and they'll like leave them over and they'll try and pull them back at the last minute. And like there's this happened in the past in previous Tour de France's where a flag will get caught on a handlebar and the person crashes because the handlebar gets ripped, the wheel gets turned. And in this case, what happened was there was a spectator on the side of the road with a sign, and as the motor cars, which are ahead of the peloton, drove by, there's a camera, like there's a little scooter thing, and the guy driving the scooter and the cameraman's on the back. He's basically pointing back towards the peloton, and this person's like facing the camera, so they turn their back to the peloton, when they do that, like, I don't know what they were thinking. Like, they didn't think at all. It was, I believe it's a woman. That's all we know. As she does this, she's got one foot on the road.
At least, yeah.
It's like you,
yeah.
The Peloton takes up the entire road, like, because it's 100 riders in a very contained area. They're all wheel to wheel, right? So they take up the entire road. So you should have 0 parts of your body in the road. Like, if any part of your body is touching the road, I done effed up. So she turns and she's got her left, if it's me, it's her left foot that's out into the road. So her left hand like rotates into the road. And she does this right as the Peloton's coming up behind her. So naturally, like, the dude, Tony Martin, has nowhere to go because he's got riders to his left. He can't turn, go around her, and he can't go right because that's off the road and it would still hit her. So he just kind of barrels into her. She, of course, goes, her arms go flying. He crashes because, these guys, even in the Peloton early in the race, which is when this happened, they might not be going the fastest, but they're still going really fast. And if you get knocked off rhythm, you're going to crash. And so he crashes. And of course, everyone's so close, like half the Peloton crashes behind him. And so there's broken bikes everywhere. I don't know if anyone, I think maybe one guy had to retire because of it. And so it's just frustrating that people's not paying attention, in a place where it's not like you have to pay attention long, right? The Peloton will pass you by in literally like 3 seconds, so it's not like you need a lot of time to pay attention. So it's just very frustrating. I know they are looking for this individual. They have not, last I checked, they had not found this individual. They likely left, it might've been someone that was, from out of the country. It's returned to their home country at this point because I wouldn't stick around, I guess, if I were them. Because everyone's looking for them.
Well, and the thing is too, like, the guy there was nothing he could do.
No.
And then you just have however many people are in that pack, they're helpless. There's nothing they can do to get out of that. And, they're clipped into their pedals, and there's nothing you can do. It's just fall and run someone over, flip over them, and it's so crazy to watch because there's nowhere, like you said, there was nowhere for him to go.
Yeah.
And he just ran into her, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. But imagine being one of the leaders that was in there, and maybe being, like you said, only one guy retired out of the race. But
I don't think it was. Luckily, I don't think anyone was really.
Can you imagine like breaking a leg or an arm or something where?
But something that I haven't seen really discussed is just the cost, right? What how many those bikes are not cheap bikes,
nope.
Right? There's broken bikes all over the place.
Yeah.
So it's like, even if you're just fixing components on those bikes, right? If they're not completely, if the main frame is fine, there's thousands of dollars worth of damage from that crash.
They're not meant to crash. Let's put it that way.
No.
So
so I think it's just, I think all, as fans of sporting events, when you can be to one in person, I think it's always great when you can be up close and personal.
Absolutely.
But that comes with, I think, responsibility on your end as a fan, right? You have to protect the athletes. Like, they're no different than you or I. They're just better at whatever they're doing than you or I.
Yeah.
So don't treat them as such, right? If you're running a race,
like, be a part of it, but don't be a part of it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Don't change the outcome. Like, be a part of the moment, but don't be a part of the actual event.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and it's cool. Like I said, it's really cool to see, like, when you hear the fans cheering in the Tour de France, and it definitely does add a lot of, sort of, vibe and emotion to the proceedings.
I think the racers probably even love it, right? Cheering, they're right there. Like, what other events crazy. Can you get that close? Probably not many.
No.
Most events are in a stadium, and you're only so close to the field, right? So it is cool in that sense, but also not when people don't think and have a giant sign sticking out in the middle of the road in their foot and just get plowed over. So I think the benefits outweigh the negative side, but it's never good to see a crash like that caused by a fan.
Yeah, no, it's So if you're in an event, especially as things continue to open up and you get more interactions, like, just be a good fan. Like,
yeah, be smart.
And we saw it in the NBA where some of the fans are being, for lack of a better term, just dicks.
Yeah,
it's like, there's no need to be, like, harassing the opponent player, right? Like I say, just boo, right? If you feel the need to boo, just boo, right? Like, literally just be like, boo. That's enough. Like, that's fine.
Seems simple enough. Yeah. I never understood like over. I mean, listen, I live around Philly. Everybody knows how Philly fans are. Over the top, we'll fight you. Like we'll literally light you on fire if the it's the Philly fans. But it is what it is. We know that for how they are. But I've just never been that way. Like I played sports my whole life. Hey, I have my favorite teams, but if they lose, I'm like, okay, they lost. I'm not on
Yeah, it
that
doesn't
team.
affect it.
Yeah.
It should not affect your life in any great way, in my
No, and
opinion.
I see these videos of guys like smashing their TVs, and it's like it's a little much.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I mean, I've certainly been upset after, watching a team I like lose, but it's like, all right. As I've grown older, I think I've certainly sort of mellowed significantly.
oh
And
yeah, I mean, I definitely when I was younger, I would get a little more into it, and I've been to like I'm a Phillies fan. Been to the World Series games. Like obviously, you're into the game at that point,
right.
but I wasn't running onto the field and throwing batteries at people or baseballs or just enjoying the game, cheering and booing. Right? If nothing more.
Yeah. I was, so I guess my favorite, one of my favorite like in-person moments was I got to go to the last game at old Cleveland Brown Stadium, Cleveland Municipal Stadium. So this was, I guess it was 1996. That was the year we left, or had to leave the league, became the Ravens, and
Yeah.
we kept the name. And so it was unfortunate. My dad was working in the restaurant business at the time. He had season tickets since the 70s, and he couldn't go. And so I went my godfather, because him and my dad have been best friends for decades now. So we go, and it's hilarious, because it was old Municipal Stadium. You could, at the time, obviously 9/11 hadn't happened yet. And you think about how that changed the world, right? You got to bring in like coolers.
Yeah, you can do
Into
whatever
the
you want.
stadium, right? You
Basically,
could do like whatever you want. So he brought in a cooler. He had like sauerkraut in there. Underneath the sauerkraut, he had a fucking saw, right? So the game's like they're getting towards it's the fourth quarter. I'm 14 years old, I guess, at the time. So I'm just an early young teenager, and I'm enjoying it. But it's like it's sad because it's like everyone at the time we didn't really know what was happening, right? We knew the Browns were leaving, and we didn't know. I don't even know if we were going to keep the name or not at that time. So everyone's like pissed and sad, and at some point in the bleachers, because the place was a dump, right? Looking back, that place was a dump. In the bleachers, they start ripping up the bleacher seats and throwing them on the field. Right? They're literally like passing the bleacher seats and just tossing them. Like it was in one of the end zones. They're tossing them on the field. And then so in our row, Uncle John pulls out the saw. He starts sawing away. And so I was very fortunate. I got to get like the number plate of my dad's seat, so I was able to take it home to him.
Nice,
because he couldn't be there, so it was cool. And but we walk out. So I think my Uncle John did the same. He got like the number plate, which is cool. But there were guys that took entire like rows of seats, like they're walking out before like the cops really started. Like cops eventually started stopping people.
Yeah,
because I think very quickly people realized like we could auction this stuff off. We shouldn't let these people just take it, even though they were going to demolish the building.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this guy's walked out like 2 or 3 seats like that they like somehow unbolted out cement, just walking out. It was nuts.
Yeah, and
it was nuts.
Well, like you said before 9/11, it was a lot of stadiums did a lot of different things, or people.
It was wild. Like my dad's seats at the time. I remember going to Browns games before that, and like whatever home game was before Christmas, like the entire row, people would bring food in and share it. Like people would like make like homemade meatballs and homemade sausage and peppers and cookies. Like and people would just bring it in and share it, and so it was like a big feast in the stands.
Now that's
like during the game.
Yeah, now that's the tailgating now. And now it's like I remember we went to an Eagles game a couple of years back, and my wife had a purse. And she wasn't even allowed to bring it in. It had to fit into this little measuring thing. And they were like, "It's too big." And she's like, "What do you want me to do with it?" Like, throw it in the trash. She was like, "I'm not throwing my purse in the trash. It's got all my stuff in it. What are you talking about?" So we had to walk all the way back to the car, put her purse away, and then walk all the way back.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, it's definitely different now. No saws or food being brought in.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Oh man, I completely lost my train of thought. So Tour de France, so Tour de France has been wild. Tour de France, yeah. Effectively, Tour de France wild. I'm curious to see how this year's tour shakes out. What else? You said you had a story about college World Series of baseball.
Yeah, so the College World Series is set now, right? It's Vanderbilt versus Mississippi State. And North Carolina State actually didn't even get to play because a bunch of guys got COVID. So
Oh yeah, I remember seeing some like headline
yeah,
about that. They like had to forfeit the series because
yeah.
of protocols.
I think like 14 guys or something on the team. And they played the one game with only so many guys and they almost won. It was kind of inspiring to watch because they only had like half their team. So nutrition client of mine from Texas, I'd known like her son was a pitcher for Texas University. He was a really good high school pitcher. And they every once in a while I'd catch a game on ESPN or see if he was pitching. I was never able to see him pitching. Right. So Saturday night, I see the game coming on. I'm like, oh, Texas is playing. Let me flip this on. Maybe I didn't even know if he was a starter or bullpen. Like I never even like kind of looked. I just knew that coach, nutrition client, she was traveling all over because they were going through regionals and super regionals. Right. So they're very busy. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get to see him pitch tonight or something. So I flipped the game on and I watched the first inning and I'm like, oh, wait, he's number 32. And I see the kid pitching. I'm like, oh, that's number 32. Because I'm friends with her on Facebook and she has him as her profile picture. So I saw the number. I'm like, oh, here he is. I guess he's a starter. So then he like flashes stats. He's got like a 2-something ERA. He's got like 130 strikeouts in like 15 games. And I see he's a sophomore. And I'm like, man, this kid's really good. Right. So, and I'm watching him pitch the first inning. And I feel like this happens to a lot of power pitchers. First inning might get a little hit around until they start to settle in. So they scored. I forget what they scored in the first inning. Might have been 1 or 2 runs, but whatever. And then after that, he just like shut them down. Right? It was like 5 or 6 innings. I think they might have. When he came out, they were up 2-1 or 3-2 or something like that. I forget the score. But in the meantime, I'm like, they're talking about how great he is, right? And I'm like, oh man, this kid's really good. So I just Googled the name. I'm like, man, he's the number 9 prospect in the MLB draft, right? He's like one of the top few pitchers in the country right now. And he's projected to go in the first round of the draft. And throughout the game, they're flashing to his mom, who's my nutrition client. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. So it was a cool story. But
Small world.
Yeah, I'm like, good for him, man. He's like, I guess he's going, I think it's his last game that he pitched. And he was pitching on 4 days rest, which wasn't typical for him. And he threw 102 or 103 pitches, and they won, right? So then they had to play them again. I think it was Saturday night. And they lost on a walk-off to Mississippi State, 4-3, which would have sent them to the finals against Vanderbilt. But still, amazing run, amazing season. And apparently this kid is as advertised. He was hitting 96, 97 and had other great pitches, had a breaking ball slider and was just mowing people down. He had I don't know how many strikeouts he had that game, maybe 7 or 8 in like 6 innings. But just, yeah, it was just super cool. And, it's not often you like know somebody that has a kid that's like that good, locally, like Mike Trout grew up like 15 minutes from me, right? And I know people that know of him or they're related to him, stuff like that. But it was just super cool to see. And she was so happy on TV. So just super cool to see like how proud she was.
That's awesome.
Her and her husband, they were just like ecstatic. So just really cool. And a good story, even though they did lose the next night, he did give him another chance to get to the finals. But still, I mean, top 3 or 4 finish in the country, incredible run by them. So it was fun. It was cool to watch. I stayed up and watched like almost the whole game.
Very cool. Well, hopefully he goes high in the draft for his and his family's sake.
I'll definitely be paying attention even more now because there is a local kid who's another top prospect. He's a high school kid. It's a phenomenal athlete. Another kid that throws like mid-90s and just a freak. Yeah. So I'll be definitely watching the draft for both guys now and see how they do. So it's pretty cool.
Awesome. I think I guess the only other real thing that I kind of paid any attention to was NBA basketball this past week. So I guess when we're recording this, the Bucks are up 2-1 over the Hawks. My brief thoughts on that series are I think the Bucks take it now. Winning, I saw the Hawks taking it. I thought the Hawks would win last night because they were at home. They had a 15-point lead that they blew completely. Middleton went off, in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And that's as we've discussed on the prior episodes with the Bucks. If he's rolling, Giannis is pretty consistent. He's going to get you 30 to 40, probably 10 to 12 rebounds and a couple assists. And if Middleton shows up, they're almost unbeatable. If Middleton decides not to show up, they're very beatable.
Yeah, it's so true, and I think he is the key to them winning the series. Is Middleton. You know what you're getting from Giannis. You know you're getting 30 and 10 or 15 rebounds, like you said. But without Middleton scoring, your next best option is probably Drew Holiday or something like that. So somebody within those two, and there's probably another guy or two in there that can help. But Middleton, I think he ended up with like 40 some points.
I think he had 38 because there was 20 in the fourth.
Okay.
It wasn't quite 40. I think it was 38 total.
Yeah, I mean, just a huge game from him. I mean, but it also opens up, basically double, triple teams on Giannis and blocking out the whole lane, which is what the Sixers did kind of effectively for a few games. Or not the Sixers. What am I saying right now? Who did they play? I don't know why I'm saying the Sixers. They just played.
I'm forgetting. I'll be honest. I can't remember. Keep you.
It was the Sixers and the Hawks and the Bucks.
Nets.
And the Nets.
They played the Nets because Durant was had the shot on the line.
I don't know why I'm saying Sixers. But the Brooklyn was blocking out the lane pretty well, and they had Blake Griffith covering him, and they did a decent job in a few games. And then when they got nothing from the outside, it was just they weren't that good, right? Like you said, very beatable. But I feel like Atlanta is a very streaky shooting team as well, and they need more than just Trae Young to score 30 or 40 every night. I think the Bucks take that, and the Suns are up 3-1 now. They're just really good.
They are, and they haven't shot well at all. I mean, it's been like a slugfest of a series. Like neither team's shooting well. It's kind of really the games have actually been kind of horrible to watch, to be honest.
Yeah, and two, like Kawhi with the injuries again. I don't understand it. He's got a sprained knee. Again, I don't know the severity of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not him, but he hasn't played in like weeks now. Whereas, at least Embiid did play with a torn meniscus, right? So I don't know. It's weird to me. It happened before the Kawhi in the series where he didn't play at all in the playoffs. And there was some skepticism around the injury. But again, I don't know. I don't know the whole story. I'm not there, but it's just weird to me. I mean, they're down 3-1. Do you at least give it a go, or
Yeah, you try to get out there again. Yeah.
We saw that.
I think the weird thing is when he injured it is that they weren't like it didn't seem that serious when he first injured it. I guess that's like to me the most confusing thing is that when he injured it, it was like, oh, it seems like he'll probably be back next game, and then he was out. They're like at last minute they're kind of like, oh, he's out, and then he was like out the next game, and the next game it's like, how serious is it? Like how misdiagnosed was this thing?
That's what I mean. Like, was it a sprained knee or was it something different? And why aren't they saying that? Why isn't there like some sort of, I don't know. It's always bizarre to me with him. I mean, the guy's obviously one of the best players in the world. But this has happened before now. I don't know. It's just, It's strange. And the guy's such a difference maker. Do the Suns win 3-1 right now if he's playing? I doubt it. Because defensively he makes a huge difference and he can score, he creates his own shots. He's a great player all around. So strange. But the Suns they're young and they're hungry and they're playing the best they can. Like you said, even though they aren't shooting that well, and both teams.
And they got one of the greatest like tip-in dunks of all time.
Yeah, that was insane. I mean, I think the series kind of took its path right there. That play.
Yeah. After
that, it's like, that was insane.
That was insane. It was a perfect pass by, I forget the guy's name. I could draw him.
Was it Crowder?
Crowder, yeah.
Crowder, yeah.
Crowder, it was perfect pass.
Yeah, he missed the backboard by like this much.
Yeah, it's perfect pass.
Angle. Yeah.
Perfect, obviously timing. I think the only thing I mentioned this on Facebook was that the last 90 seconds took 33 minutes of game, like actual real time. It's
totally agree with you there.
They need to speed up the reviews somehow. Like I understand they want to get the call right, but like you should not have 90 seconds. Like I put it on. I was like, oh, let me watch the end of this game. And I was going to I think it was like on Friday or Saturday night, whatever it was. I was going to maybe like play a little video games or something or just relax, read a book before I went to bed. And it took, I'm like, after a while, I'm like, this is taking forever.
Well,
You know,
I
I'm glad
actually
the ending was great, but like
when
it
they
shouldn't take
turned
that.
when they turned over the out of bounds call, I turned it off. I was like, I can't watch this anymore.
I
I
understand why you
was
did.
so frustrated. It took so long. Not only did it take so long, but I think that call, I mean, it's not a call you ever review in real game speed, like ever. Like, even
Yeah,
though it did look like he continued to push the ball, the guy that hit it out of his hand is who knocked it out of bounds, right? You could probably slow down that play a million times in different scenarios in the league, and maybe it looks like the other guy pushed it out. But
yeah. That was, I think, the one of the commentators' points is that yes, it's technically off the guy like that's dribbling the ball. You know, if you slow it down, you go, oh yeah, okay. You know, the guy, if you're dribbling the ball, I hit the ball, but then it kind of bounces. You're still pushing it, and so it goes off of you technically.
yeah,
But it's, you know, why is it for 99% of the game we don't ever check that,
correct.
and then, you know, we check it at the end.
And there's
I agree with
already
that.
enough intentional fouls, even though they don't call them intentional fouls. You shouldn't be able to foul to your advantage. That's my other issue at the end of games.
I can see that.
Like, just to stop the clock, right? Or to like make them shoot free throws instead of having an offensive set that takes time, right? I feel like in football, there's a similar thing that I don't like. So, say you're on the 8-yard line and you get a 10-yard penalty, right? Why is it half the distance? Why doesn't you put the ball in the goal line? Go as far as you possibly can for that penalty. I never understood that rule either. So there's like things like that like, I don't know. And I you know, you see guys
For me, it's the advancing of the ball on a timeout.
Okay, yeah.
That's the one that bothers me, where you can, you know,
To half court.
You score, I call timeout, and I'm allowed to get now inbound from half court.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. Why do you get the ball at half court? You didn't.
Like, yeah, why? I can understand like allowing that to, like, you get one of those per half, like one time per half you're allowed to like advance the ball, right? So then there's some strategy, and I think there is a limit, but I think the limit's too, however many they give is too high, in my opinion.
Yeah.
There should be like one per half. And that way you have to be very, you know, cognizant of when you use it, right? You can't just like be like, oh, it's under 2 minutes and we're down 3. Let's just advance the ball.
And the problem is too, when they take all those timeouts, it's commercial, it's advertisement, it's break, it just never. That end was the long, and that's I was like, I can't do this anymore. They're ruining the game. It was a great game, and of course I turned it off, and the greatest play ever happened, and I missed it. But of course I saw it the next day 50,000 times on social media. But yeah, wild finish there, and I think that changed the whole series. So
yeah, I agree with that. I think it's hard to come back from that.
Yeah,
lose that one. What are you looking forward to this next week in the sporting world?
Oh man, yeah, just to see who ends up in the finals as far as the NBA. Again, baseball's kind of in its boring months right now. I feel like July 4th weekend coming up. Wimbledon started, so I'll definitely be checking out some of that. I think today was day one of Wimbledon, I believe.
I think that sounds right.
Yeah.
Was Wimbledon one of those like it takes 2 weeks, right?
It's long. I feel like, yeah, I'm not sure, but
yeah,
I don't think it's over this coming weekend. So
yeah, I think it's 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's I definitely like watching it though. Just the prestige of the whole thing. It's I feel like
I watched like the last like maybe day or two.
Yeah. I'm not gonna watch this week, but maybe I'll start towards the weekend, see some better matchups and some of the bigger name people. But I've always watched that as a kid. I always wanted to play tennis. We didn't live in that type of area. It wasn't like there's a lot of tennis players out here. I did like playing it though. My mom used to hit the ball around a lot, so we would go to like a court and play. But it's not like
that's fun.
There was not like tennis clubs. I don't know. It was just like wasn't a big sport where I live. But I've always enjoyed watching it, and used to be a big Yvonne Lendl fan back in the day.
Oh, that's
like
that's
80s.
an esoteric name.
Yeah, back in the day. I don't know. I love that guy, but yeah. So I'll be watching that, and whatever else pops on. I'm sure I'll be checking out some of the College World Series, stuff like that. So,
yeah, for me, Tour de France for sure this week. Obviously,
yeah, I'll check that out too if there's some stages on. What channel are they playing that on? Because I do actually like.
It's only on NBC Sportsnet,
okay.
But if you have Peacock, it's on Peacock too. So okay. I have Peacock mainly just for the NBC Sports stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to probably talk the wife into getting Peacock because a lot of things are getting put on Peacock right now.
Yeah, a lot of sports stuff because I think they're getting rid of like NBC Sports Network like in the next year. So
gotcha.
I think it's just all going to be on Peacock.
Transfer. Yeah, we'll get the app. See how much it costs.
I think it's like $5 a month. It's not much.
That's not bad at all. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's obviously F1 and IndyCar this weekend. IndyCar's got one race on July 4th, and F1 has the third race in their triple header, their first triple header of the year. This past weekend's race was pretty boring, to be honest. Verstappen crushed everyone. Leclerc drove like an idiot in the first lap and crashed out Gasly, which was annoying because I like Gasly. But yeah, pretty boring race this past weekend. We'll see what this next week has in store. And yeah, I think that's it for me. Again, yeah, NBA stuff. I'll be curious to see how it goes and see. I think the Hawks will probably steal another game here or there, but I do think the Bucks will end up taking it.
Yeah, I could see that going 6, just because the Hawks are scrappy. They're a really scrappy team.
Yeah, and I can see a game where the Bucks don't shoot well, and Middleton is one of his games where he has 11 points and shoots 3 for 18 from the floor.
That could definitely happen.
Yeah, so I see that game plus scrappy Hawks and scrappy Trae Young, they pull it off.
Yeah.
Also this week we have our next episode of the CHP podcast coming out on the 1st. It's an interview I conducted with new CHP coach Kelsey Koger. So if you are listening to the podcast, go ahead and check that out. Of course, if you enjoy what we're doing here and you find our ranting and raving at all entertaining in the background of whatever you're doing, give this video a like and maybe subscribe. We would appreciate it to help us grow the channel. And of course, if you really like us, feel free to share with your friends. Maybe this will give them some entertainment. Kenny, how can people get in touch with you?
Oh, my Instagram. And you know it better than I do, so I don't.
KBarber39.
KBarber39. Yeah, you can reach out to me there. Shoot me a DM, whatever. Also, do coach programming at Complete Human Performance, so more of the CrossFit weightlifting side of things. And yeah. Which,
if you've been following the CHP Instagram account, you've probably seen highlights of or teases of the Crucible, which is an event that's going to be happening this fall. And it might be useful to have one of us coaches help you. There's going to be a group for that, sort of a kind of group coaching product we'll have. So more information on that when we release that, we'll announce it here as well. You can follow at Complete Human Performance on Instagram. You can follow myself on Instagram at Durazio Anthony. I don't post so often, but you can also email me. It's probably the best way to get a hold of me. Anthony.Durazio@CompleteHumanPerformance.com. If you have questions for myself or Kenny, you could email me there, and I can, of course, ask Kenny, and we can pass you along an answer about coaching, nutrition, life, the universe. Yeah, sports. Whatever. Sports. Yeah, we'll talk about anything. Kenny, anything else?
Nah, man, that's it.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next week.
See you.